Brisbane follows the trend of most global cities in the world. The city is a hub, where we work, where we congregate, and even a part of how we identify ourselves. As a result, the future of Brisbane is very much tied to the experiences of the people who live here. Part of these experiences is the ability to share, connect, and communicate using social media platforms and new technologies. This has led to a greater flow of information, but in an increasingly time-poor and interactive world, that flow of information can often get out of hand, or worse, hijacked by the dreaded trolls. This is where we, the future journalists, step in. In the future, it will be our cumulative knowledge and skills that ensure that news and information is produced accurately, honestly, and objectively, in much the same way that professional journalists frame news today. However, as new media and entrepreneurship researcher Steve Fox points out, the role of citizen reporters and crowdsourced news stories has increased exponentially in the past 5 years.
As far as the practice of journalism goes, it has incorporated a lot of these new media techniques, so crowdsourcing, interacting with the audience, and so that divide between producers and audiences that has traditionally existed for the sake of, let's say, authority and distinguishing the product, that divide is no longer there.
The way which the average citizen becomes embedded in news production processes as producers, rather than just audience members, is typical of an open newsroom model of journalism. Citizens are invited to directly contribute to the news they consume, collaborating with traditional journalists to produce factual news as it happens.
So the principles of journalism haven't changed as far as fourth estate role, as far as informing the public, and also to an extent filtering information. These roles have not changed, but they need to be ramped up, so to speak.
The redefinition of the journalism principles could be as simple as having more voices or multiple sources involved in the process of breaking news.
I think it's still going to continue to play an extremely important role. It might just be a bit more, a bit more democratised and a bit more accessible to a wider, broader, range of people to participate.
Citizen journalists will provide their opinions and direct insight more extensively, while reporters will assume a more investigative position to provide the essential facts and expert knowledge behind the issue. This symbiotic relationship between news consumers and producers will be further enhanced by the open and unbounded online environment as a place where a limitless volume of information is available. Media scholar Axel Bruns has written extensively on this issue. In particular, his research surrounding social media has demonstrated how the traditional boundaries between news audiences and journalists have created a greater space for dialogue and interaction in the production of news.
Really, through the advent of modern social media technologies, Facebook, Twitter and so on, we've now got these kind of third spaces where journalists, regular news users, regular news audiences, commentators, critics, experts on various fields, the newsmakers themselves, politicians and others themselves, are actually all coming together in a shared space. And so what you're getting there is much less of the sort of the newsroom that decides what is the news and what gets published, but actually sort of an ongoing conversation, an ongoing discussion about the news, about what's currently going on.
Traditional news organisations no longer have veto power over what is and is not considered news. As a result, more and more journalists are assuming the role of news curators, their focus shifting from one of gatekeeping to what Axel calls gate watching.
You've got a lot of different people who are actually putting out that information already, who are not traditional journalists. And yes, so if the role of the journalist then is to pull all of that together and make sense of it, and do still what journalists do best, which is to evaluate and to make sense and to pull together the threads and really make sense of all of these different bits of information, put them together into one solid piece of news.
One of the biggest challenges of the open newsroom model, then, is ensuring that citizens actually have the equipment and facilities to put the information out there. Brisbane is already ahead of the pack, thanks to open newsroom projects such as the State Library of Queensland's Citizen J. Although the project served only as a trial during 2013, the news coordinator Ursula Warden believed it demonstrated the way the open newsroom model can empower average Brisbane citizens to express their opinions and views.
My thoughts on the open newsroom are it's a collaborative place, not necessarily physical space, partially online and virtual, partially a physical space where non-professionals can collaborate with professionals or semi-professionals to produce newsworthy content.
People decide what is big news.
I think within Brisbane it's definitely leaning towards more social media sort of foundation for how people access their news now. I mean, the Courier Mail and stuff is still important, but they use their online presence to reach more.
Everything's like online these days.
Thanks to technologies like the internet and mobile devices, news processes have become a lot more collaborative and democratic. Anyone can participate, including marginalised citizens whose voices are otherwise silenced by the old business model.
I think one of the good things about new technologies is that it's giving voice to the voiceless. You know, people are now able to use the technologies to express themselves. Minority groups are now able to suggest, story ideas, respond to stories published about them that might be incorrect.
The news process will encourage a circular flow of information, where greater participation will empower readers to become more involved in the news process. Traditional journalism will still exist in the future, but it will be very different, as journalists will have to use innovation and collaboration through the open newsroom to produce content.